welcome to the Missing Dots channel.
Alhamdulillah, it is so good to just sit down.
Yeah, honestly, man, sitting here right after prayer, there's just a completely different vibe. you know?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so peaceful.
It really is.
Yeah.
So for you listening right now, just pull up a chair, treat yourself to a cup of tea, and relax with us. Because today, we are unpacking something that, well, honestly, it completely blew my mind.
I'm excited for this one. You've been reading that massive research paper, right?
Yeah, exactly. This PhD-level source material on a subject called imamology, or in Islamic theology, they call it ilm al-imama. And I have to say, this is probably one of the most intense, densely packed things I've ever read.
MashaAllah, that is definitely a heavy read for a relaxed post-prayer session.
Right. But the thing is, it is just so fascinating.
It really is. I mean, it's a topic that touches on the absolute deepest and sometimes the most taboo questions of Islamic history, theology, and even human psychology.
Yeah, and we should clarify right out of the gate, our goal today is absolutely not to debate who is right or who is wrong.
Exactly. We are not taking sides here.
Not at all. We are just looking at the source material. We want to understand the history, the incredible theological architecture of these ideas, and the psychological needs that shaped these complex beliefs.
Right. It's purely analytical.
Okay, so let's unpack this, because for the average person like you, me, and our friend listening right now, an imam is just the person leading the Friday prayer.
Right? Yeah, just the guy standing at the front of the mosque.
Exactly. A community figure. So how did this practical, everyday word turn into a massive cosmic theology that literally split empires, caused wars, and shaped the entire modern Middle East?
Well, that is the foundational question. And to even begin answering it, we have to look at how completely different groups define the very word imam.
Because it's not just one definition.
Not at all. Over the centuries, this single word took on radically different realities. The paper breaks this down beautifully. So if we look purely at the Sunni perspective, the caliph or the imam is a purely political and legal administrator.
Okay, like a practical leader.
Right. The concept is based on shura, which means community consultation or consensus. So Sunni theology dictates that the imam is just a regular human being. He is fallible.
Meaning he can make mistakes.
Exactly. He can make mistakes, he can sin, he has no supernatural knowledge. His primary job is just to manage the affairs of the community, defend the borders, and implement the Sharia. It's fundamentally an administrative function.
It's actually pretty simple if you think about it, like corporate structures versus, say, royal bloodlines.
Oh, that's an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah, like the Sunni view is basically about electing a CEO to manage a company based on consensus and competence. The board of directors, the community elders, they choose him.
Right.
And if the CEO isn't doing a good job, or if he becomes corrupt, then in theory, the board can just vote him out and replace him. It's a functional, pragmatic system.
That's spot on. It is a human system for a human community. But then the research transitions into the 12 or Shia technical doctrine, and the definition completely radically shifts.
Yeah, this is where it gets super intense.
It really does, because there, the imam is not just an administrator or a CEO. In 12er theology, the imam is divinely appointed through explicit, unchangeable designation by God and the Prophet.
Which they call Nas.
Yes, Nas. And along with that designation comes ijma, which is absolute infallibility.
Wait, absolute?
Yes. They believe the imam is absolutely masum, meaning he is completely protected from committing any sin, any religious error, or even a minor forgetful mistake.
See, I never thought about it that way, but that is a massive theological leap. I mean, we are talking about a human being who eats, sleeps, walks in the market, but possesses total divine protection from sin.
Yeah, and it goes even further than that. The paper details that they possess divinely gifted knowledge known as ilm laduni.
Ilm laduni, meaning knowledge straight from God.
Exactly. They receive knowledge of all things directly from Allah without needing a human teacher. But the most profound aspect of the 12er doctrine is their cosmic status.
The cosmic status. Unpack that for me.
So, the imam is considered a hujjah, the ultimate proof of God on earth. The doctrine explicitly states that the earth cannot exist for a single fraction of a second without a living hujjah.
Wow.
If the earth were ever completely empty of an imam, it would instantly collapse and be destroyed, along with everyone on it. He is literally the existential anchor of the physical universe.
Okay, I have to pause you there because I want to make sure I'm fully grasping this.
Go ahead.
If this person has total infallibility, divine knowledge, and is literally keeping the universe from collapsing, how is he not a prophet?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah, because Qutb Buwat, the finality of prophethood with Muhammad, that is a core, unbreakable tenet for all Muslims. How does Twelver theology maintain that the Imam isn't crossing the line into prophethood?
That is precisely the tightrope that Twelver theologians have walked for centuries. It's highly complex. They argue that a prophet, a Nabi, or Rasul brings a new law, a new Sharia, and receives direct revelation brought down by the angel Jibreel.
Okay, a new law is the key distinction.
Right. The Imam, on the other hand, does not bring a new law. He is the divine guardian and the infallible interpreter of the prophet's existing law.
Ah, I see.
So the function is technically different, even if the spiritual rank of the Imam is considered equal to, or in some mystical texts, even higher than previous major prophets like Ibrahim or Musa.
Wow, higher than previous prophets. That is wild. So, keeping my analogy alive, the Twelver Shia view believes the company founder didn't just leave things to a board of directors.
Right.
He explicitly named a royal heir, and that heir magically possesses all the founder's genius and divine authority naturally transferred by blood.
That's a very accurate way to map it, but the complexity in the source material doesn't just stop at those two views. The research highlights other major factions that tried to fill this leadership vacuum in completely different ways.
Yeah, like the Zaydi Shia view.
Exactly. The Zaydis, who mostly live in modern-day Yemen today, have a completely different concept.
Right, because for them, cosmic perfection isn't the point.
No, not at all. Zaydists believe an imam must be a learned descendant of Fatima, sure, but crucially, he must physically rise up and draw his sword against oppression.
So it's an activist role.
Yes, an activist imam. For them, it is not necessary for the imam to be masum, or infallible. In fact, if you just sit quietly in your house studying, you cannot be a Zaydi imam, no matter how pure your bloodline is.
That's fascinating. You actually have to earn the title through physical rebellion and resistance.
Yeah.
It's way more grounded in political reality than cosmic theology.
It is. And then, moving further along the spectrum, you have the Ismailis.
Oh man, the paper spends a huge chunk of time on them. And reading their theology felt like I was reading ancient Greek philosophy.
Well, you're actually spot on with the Greek philosophy connection. Ismaili imamology is heavily intertwined with Neoplatonism.
Neoplatonism, explain that simply for us.
To put it simply, Neoplatonism is an ancient school of thought which argues that everything in the universe emanates or flows out from a single, perfect, unknowable source. They call it the One. From the One flows the universal intellect, and from that flows the universal soul. And it eventually trickles down into our physical, material world.
So it's like a massive cosmic waterfall of reality.
Precisely. Now, Ismaili theologians took this vast philosophical framework and mapped their imamology right onto it.
SubhanAllah, that is complex.
Extremely. In their view, there must always be a continuous, physically living imam. They completely reject the Twelver idea of a hidden imam.
Right, because for Ismailis, the living imam is the physical manifestation of that active intellect on earth.
Yes. He is the ultimate living guide who connects our lower physical world all the way back up to the divine source.
And then, on the complete opposite end of all this mysticism, the paper talks about the Ibadi view.
The Ibadis, yes, mostly in modern Oman.
Right, and they come from the early Kharijite tradition. Their approach just seems so aggressively pragmatic.
Very pragmatic. For the Ibadis, having an imam is necessary just to keep the community in order. But, and this is the key, if the political situation gets too dangerous, or if they are facing severe state persecution, the imam can become hidden or secret.
They call it Kitman, right?
Yes, Kitman. But you have to understand, this isn't some mystical cosmic occultation where he becomes immortal.
Right, he doesn't disappear into another dimension.
No, it's literal, physical hiding for survival. No divine mystery at all. It's just practical safety. The imam is basically just a pious mortal scholar laying low in a safe house until the political climate is safe enough to govern openly again.
The thing is, when you take a step back, and you listening, just picture this. You put all these definitions on a table. Sunni, Twelver, Zaydi, Ismaili, Ibadi. It makes you realize just how massive the vacuum was after the Prophet passed away.
A monumental vacuum.
Right. Every single group tried to fill that void using whatever specific political, spiritual, or philosophical tools they had available.
Exactly, but here is where the research gets incredibly intense, and I really want us to spend some time on this.
Yeah, let's get into it.
These doctrines, specifically the Twelver and Ismaili ideas of a divinely infallible guide with secret cosmic knowledge. Secular historians and academics in this paper argue that these concepts did not just drop out of a clear blue sky.
Right. They didn't just appear in a vacuum.
No, they suggest there is a massive, traceable influence from ancient empires and pre-Islamic cultures.
And what's fascinating is how detailed the structural parallels are when you look at late antiquity. Like, academic historians absolutely love tracing the genealogy of ideas, right?
Oh, it's their primary methodology.
So when Islam spread so rapidly in the 7th century, it conquered the mighty Sassanid Persian Empire and huge swaths of the Byzantine Roman Empire.
Millions of people converted over a relatively short period.
Right. And secular scholars argue that when these populations became Muslim, they naturally brought their deep-seated cultural, psychological, and religious frameworks right into their new faith.
Yes. And the paper specifically points to ancient Persia as a prime example. For centuries, Zoroastrianism was the state religion there, and they had this core concept called Kvarena.
Kvarena, the paper translates that as divine glory or a supernatural divine light. Right?
Exactly. Ancient Persian kingship heavily relied on this Kvarna. It was believed to be a literal, glowing, divine essence, and only legitimate kings and high priests possessed it.
Oh, wow.
This light was what divinely sanctioned their rule. If you didn't have this light, it didn't matter how powerful your army was, you were not considered a legitimate ruler.
And the secular academic argument in the paper is that this Persian concept of Kvarena was basically just Islamicized. It evolved into the Twelver and Ismaili concept of Nur Muhammadi, the pre-eternal light of Muhammad.
Yes, exactly.
The belief that a literal divine light was passed down from the prophet explicitly through the bloodline of the Imams. I mean, structurally, it's almost the exact same mechanism to legitimize authority,
Right.
just wearing different religious clothing.
That is the secular academic critique, yes.
Yeah.
And it doesn't stop with just the light. Look at Zoroastrian eschatology, their belief about the end of the world.
Right, they have a messianic figure.
They do. He is called the Saushant. He is prophesied to appear at the end of the world, born of a virgin, to lead the final cosmic battle against evil and purify the earth.
Oh.
Historians point out that the structural parallel between the Saushant and the Islamic concept of the Mahdi, especially the 12 hidden Mahdi, is incredibly striking.
Honestly, the parallels just keep going. The paper dives into Gnosticism and Manichaeism too. We should probably give some context on that for the listener.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
So Gnosticism was this massive, very trendy spiritual movement across the Middle East in late antiquity. Their whole deal was that the physical world we live in is fundamentally flawed, and salvation only comes through secret, hidden knowledge.
Right. The Greek word for knowledge is gnosis.
Exactly. And Gnostic traditions taught that you couldn't get this esoteric knowledge just from reading a standard book or listening to a regular preacher. You needed a divine intermediary, a revealer, who held the exclusive keys to this hidden reality.
Precisely. And the academic paper maps this directly onto the Shia doctrine of Batin versus Zahir.
Batin meaning the hidden meaning, and Zahir meaning the apparent meaning.
Exactly. The idea is that the Quran has an outer apparent meaning that the uneducated masses can understand. But it also has a deep, hidden, cosmic meaning that only the infallible Imam can properly decode.
It's a direct parallel to the Gnostic revealer.
Yes. For the secular historian, this is a clear-cut case of syncretism. Syncretism is when different, distinct religious beliefs blend together over time.
Right.
They argue that the early Shia community was facing severe political marginalization. They were being hunted and persecuted by the Umayyad and Abbasid empires. So to survive, they adopted these ancient Gnostic and Persian frameworks.
The logic being, if you can't win on the actual physical battlefield, you elevate your leader to a cosmic, unperchable realm where earthly defeat just doesn't matter anymore.
That's the secular sociological read, yes.
And what about the Judeo-Christian parallels? The paper spends a lot of time on the obsession with the number 12.
Oh, the number 12 is everywhere.
Right. You have the 12 tribes of Israel in Judaism, Jesus having exactly 12 apostles in Christianity, and then the 12 Shia having exactly 12 imams. Surely, from a secular standpoint, historians look at that and see a community borrowing a highly recognizable sacred template.
Absolutely. They also look at the mechanical structures of authority. Think about the Catholic doctrine of papal infallibility.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
When the Pope speaks ex cathedra, meaning from the chair of St. Peter, specifically on matters of faith and morals, Catholics believe he is preserved from error by the Holy Spirit. Structural scholars look at the Imam's ijma, his infallibility, and say, look, Humans consistently invent the exact same psychological mechanisms to guarantee that their earthly leadership is completely free from error.
Okay, I hear all of that, but I have to push back here on behalf of the believers.
Go for it.
Because right now we are talking entirely from the secular, academic, sociological point of view, the whole syncretism argument. But if you are a devout theologian, you can read this exact same data and come to a completely opposite conclusion, right?
Oh, absolutely. This is where the theological lens flips the narrative 180 degrees.
Explain how they see it.
A traditional theologian looks at all these parallels, the divine light, the savior figure, the number 12, the infallible guide, and says, this isn't evidence of Muslims copying pagans.
Right.
This is evidence of a primordial truth.
Right. The classic Islamic argument that Allah sent 124,000 prophets to all nations throughout history.
Exactly. The theological argument is that God's blueprint for humanity has always been exactly the same.
So it's not copying, it's consistency.
Yes. If ancient Persians had a concept of divine light, or early Christians focused on the number 12, it is simply because those were fragments of the original divine truth given to their respective prophets centuries earlier.
Wow.
Over time, those older religions became corrupted or mythologized. So when Islam arrived, it didn't borrow these concepts, it perfected and corrected them, restoring the original divine pattern.
I mean, that is deeply profound.
Mm-hmm.
So the secular academic looks at the data and sees human cultural assimilation people mixing ideas as they migrate. But the believer looks at the exact same data and sees the beautiful, unbreakable continuity of a divine pattern echoing through time.
It's a perfect duality of perspectives. But what's really fascinating here is that regardless of which view you adopt, it reveals a fundamental, universal truth about human nature.
Which is?
Across different millennia, across vastly different geographies and cultures, human beings are absolutely terrified of moral uncertainty.
That makes so much sense.
We consistently crave a perfect, infallible bridge between the heavens and the earth. We want someone who knows the exact truth without any shadow of a doubt to tell us what to do.
I agree completely. Humans always want a figure they can put unquestionable trust in. But, and this is a big, embracing these ancient ideas is great in theory. The reality is, once you get into the actual timeline of history, things get very, very messy.
Extremely messy.
Specifically, the paper spends a massive amount of time on the late 9th century, because this was the era when this entire 12er theology went through a brutal existential crisis. I'm talking about the year 874 CE.
Yes, 874 CE is arguably the single most critical pivot point in all Islamic sectarian history.
Set the scene for us. What was happening?
To understand the gravity of this year, we have to look at the Abbasid Empire. They were at the absolute height of their power, but they were also consumed by paranoia.
Paranoia about what?
About the Imams. Their capital, Samarra, wasn't just a normal city. It was a massive, heavily fortified military garrison. The Abbasid caliphs knew perfectly well that the Imams, who descended from Ali and Fatima, had a powerful, devoted following that could potentially organize and overthrow them.
So they basically kept the Imams under strict surveillance.
Strict is an understatement. The 11th Imam, Hassan al-Askari, lived almost his entire adult life under intense house arrest in Samarra.
Wow.
The state watched his every single move. Every visitor, every piece of correspondence was monitored. And then, in 874 CE, Imam Hassan al-Askari passes away.
And he was young, right?
Very young, only about 28 years old. And the massive earth-shattering problem was that physically, publicly, he had no obvious heir. No son.
Right. The paper notes that the Abbasid authorities aggressively investigated his household after his death. They literally brought in midwives to check if any of his wives or concubines were pregnant.
Yes, they were thorough.
And they found nothing. So they officially, legally declared that he died childless, and they just divided his estate between his mother and his brother Jafar.
You can imagine the sheer, unprecedented panic in his community.
Oh, it must have been terrifying.
The entire theological architecture we just discussed, the absolute belief that the earth cannot exist for a single second without a living hujjah, was suddenly colliding violently with a brutal biological reality.
Their imam was dead, and there was no successor.
Exactly. It was a crisis of epic proportions.
It must have felt like the literal end of the world for them. The cognitive shock must have been devastating. How did the community even react to that? Because the paper says they splintered violently.
Splintered is putting it mildly. Heresiologists from that time record that the community broke into roughly 14 different factions.
14.
Yes. Some factions just gave up and said the Imam had ended. Some said the Imam transferred sideways to his brother Jafar. Some even said Hassan al-Askari wasn't actually dead, but had just gone into hiding.
But The group that survived, the one that became the mainstream 12er Shia we know today, they made a monumental claim, didn't they?
They did. They claimed that a son actually did exist.
A secret son.
Yes. They asserted that a son named Muhammad al-Mahdi had been born secretly during his father's lifetime.
But how did no one know?
They argued that because of the intense Abbasid paranoia and the threat of assassination, his birth and his very existence were kept completely hidden from everyone, except a tiny handful of elite, highly trusted insiders.
Okay.
And upon his father's death, this young boy, who was only around 5 years old at the time, became the 12th Imam and immediately went into what is called the minor occultation.
The Ghaibat al-Sugra.
Exactly.
Okay, we really need to deeply explore this minor occultation because the mechanics of it are wild.
They are very unique.
This period lasts for roughly 67 years, from 874 to 941 CE. So you have a community that is told their divinely appointed infallible leader is a 5-year-old boy who they are never ever allowed to see, hear, or meet. How did they possibly function?
They functioned entirely through a system of intermediaries. Over these 67 years, 4 specific men, known as the Sufara, or deputies, stepped forward consecutively.
Who were they?
The first was a man named Uthman al-Amri, who had been a highly trusted aide to the 11th Imam. He and the 3 deputies who succeeded him after he died claimed that they, and only they, had physical access to the hidden Imam.
Wow. So they basically became the absolute exclusive gatekeepers of all divine authority.
Exactly. The community would bring their theological questions, their legal disputes, and, critically, their religious taxes to these deputies.
Right, the Kums.
Yes, the Kums, which is a 20% tax on surplus wealth. The deputy would supposedly take these questions and the money to the hidden Imam and then return to the community with the taqi.
Which is like a written decree.
Yes, a written decree or fatwa bearing the signature or the seal of the hidden Imam.
Okay, I have to put on my skeptical hat here, because the secular analysis in this paper is incredibly razor sharp on this specific point. The paper uses sociological frameworks to analyze this 67-year period, and sociologists look at this and call it a classic case of cognitive dissonance.
You are referring to Leon Festinger's theory.
Right.
Exactly.
The theory that when a deeply held prophecy fails, believers often double down rather than admit their core belief is wrong. If you are a devout follower, admitting that the line of imams just biologically ended means admitting your entire cosmic worldview is false.
Right. It means all the sacrifices were for nothing.
Exactly. So sociologically, it is far less painful to just spiritualize the problem. To say, he isn't gone, he is just invisible. And when you look at those 4 deputies, I mean, secular historians argue this looks incredibly suspicious.
How so?
Well, it looks exactly like a managed transition by an elite clerical class to maintain their power, their structural authority, and their lucrative tax revenue.
That is the core of the secular historical critique. Historians argue that an abrupt, unmanaged end to the imane would have completely dissolved the community overnight.
Right.
The 67-year minor occultation provided a necessary psychological buffer. It allowed the administrative class to slowly wean the population off the need for a physically present leader. They collected the kums, they issued the decrees, they kept the network together.
And then conveniently, when the 4th deputy was on his deathbed in 941 CE, he produced a final letter from the hidden imam.
Yes, a very famous final letter.
And that letter essentially said, "Do not appoint another deputy after you. The time of the major occultation has begun. No one will see me again until God permits it before the end of time."
Precisely, the Ghaibat al-Kubra. And that letter shifted the paradigm permanently. The physical, accessible imam was replaced entirely by an unseen, eschatological savior figure.
And here's where it gets really interesting, and where the absolute taboo questions arise.
Again,
Ask a question that the paper highlights as the giant elephant in the room.
let's hear it.
Honestly, from a purely biological and practical standpoint, how does a human being live for over 1,100 years? Biology decays, cells mutate. And practically, if he is completely hidden from the world, how is he actually guiding anyone today?
Let's address the biology first from the theological perspective. Because for devout 12er theologians, this is not a biological problem at all. It is a theological certainty.
How do they justify it?
They argue that God is the creator of biology and time, and he is simply not bound by them. They point to clear Quranic precedents. Hazrat Nuh, or Noah, lived for nearly a millennium.
True.
Hazrat Khidr is widely believed to still be alive. Hazrat Isa, Jesus, was raised up and is preserved alive. If God can suspend the laws of nature for them by a divine miracle mujiza, he can easily preserve the Mahdi in his prime for centuries. For God, time is simply irrelevant.
Okay, I understand the theological consistency there. If you believe in an omnipotent God, miracles are part of the package. But what about the practicality of his guidance? The classic metaphor the paper mentions is that the hidden imam is like the sun behind the clouds.
Yes, that is a very famous, very beautiful saying attributed to the imams themselves.
Explain the metaphor.
The idea is that even if the sun is hidden behind thick, dark clouds, it still provides daylight. It still warms the Earth. Its gravitational pull still dictates the orbit of the planets. Its unseen presence is what keeps the entire system functioning.
Okay.
Similarly, the hidden imam is the spiritual axis of the world. He emits a spiritual grace, a baraka, that sustains the universe, even if the average person cannot physically see him.
I'm sorry, I have to push back on that metaphor too.
That's fair.
The sun behind the clouds is a beautiful, deeply poetic image. It's incredibly comforting for the soul. But practically speaking, a cloud doesn't collect Coombs taxes.
No, it doesn't.
A cloud doesn't issue a fatwa on modern banking. A cloud doesn't decide whether to go to war or sign a peace treaty. How did the average 10th century farmer, or a modern-day believer for that matter, practically benefit from a guy who cannot be spoken to?
And that very practical, very real frustration is exactly what leads to the massive scriptural and theological debates that the paper covers next.
Because when the leader is utterly invisible, everything falls on interpreting old texts.
Exactly. The burden of truth shifts entirely to hermeneutics. The paper dedicates a huge section to what it calls the 100 taboo questions, and this is where the Sunni critique of imamology is the most direct and unyielding.
Yes, the scriptural silence. This part blew my mind. The Sunni critique, championed by scholars like Ibn Taymiyyah and others throughout history, asks a devastatingly simple question.
It is fundamentally a question of theological proportionality.
Right. Break that down for us.
The Twelver Doctrine states that belief in the divinely appointed imam is usul al-din. It is a fundamental pillar of faith. In their classical theology, rejecting the imam is tantamount to rejecting the prophet himself.
So it literally determines your eternal salvation or damnation.
Yes. So the Sunni critique asks, if this specific continuous lineage of infallible imams is the absolute core of the religion, why isn't the word imam, in this technical Twelver sense, explicitly defined in the Quran?
Exactly. I mean, the Quran has incredibly detailed rules about divorce. It tells you exactly how to wash yourself for prayer. It details inheritance laws down to mathematical fractions. It mentions the stories of past prophets in repetitive detail.
It does.
So the Sunni argument is, if knowing and obeying Ali ibn Abi Talib and his 11 descendants is the ultimate test of a Muslim's faith, why didn't the Quran just clearly name them? Why not just one explicit verse saying, listen to Ali after Muhammad? Why leave something so crucial, so ambiguous, that it caused 1,400 years of civil war and bloodshed?
It's a very powerful argument. But the Twelver Shia theological response is highly structured, and it relies on a specific methodology of reading the text.
How do they respond?
They argue that the Quran is a book of kulliyat generalities. It provides the overarching universal principles. It is the role of the Prophet Muhammad through his sunnah and his hadith to provide the juziyat, the particulars.
Okay, so it's like how the Quran says, establish prayer, but it doesn't tell you how many raka'at to pray at Maghrib.
Right.
It leaves the details to the Prophet. So they are saying the Quran says follow the divine leaders, but leaves it to the Prophet to actually name them.
Precisely. Furthermore, Shia exegetes argue that the Quran actually does speak of imamat extensively, but you have to understand the tafsir, the exegesis, and the context of the revelation.
The Asbab al-Nuzul.
Yes. The prime example the paper analyzes is verse 5.55, which is known as the Ayat al-Wilayah.
What did it say?
It translates roughly to, your true guardian, your wali, is only Allah, his messenger, and those who believe, who establish prayer and give charity while bowing down in ruku.
And the Shia historical context for this verse is very specific, right? I read this part.
Yes. Both Shia and many Sunni historical sources record an event where Hazrat Ali was praying in the mosque. A beggar came in asking for alms. Ali, while in the physical state of bowing in ruku, pointed his finger, allowing the beggar to slide off his ring and take it.
Oh, wow.
Shia theology asserts that verse 5.55 was revealed in that exact moment, explicitly locking the concept of divine guardianship, or wilaya, directly to Ali.
And obviously the capstone of this entire argument is the event of Ghadir Khumm.
Yes, Ghadir Khumm is central.
The Prophet stops a massive caravan of thousands of pilgrims in the sweltering heat on his way back from his final Hajj. He raises Ali's hand and says, Man kuntu mala fa aliyun mala. meaning, for whomever I am his Mawla, Ali is his Mawla. For the Shia, this is the mic drop moment. It is the explicit nas, the official designation.
It is the absolute foundational moment for them. But this is exactly where hermeneutics, the science of interpretation, creates a massive divide.
Because Sunnis don't deny the event happened, right?
Yeah.
No, not at all. Sunnis do not deny Ghadir Qum. The hadith is considered authentic across the board. The debate is purely over the definition of the word mawla.
Right.
In Arabic, mawla is a polysemy. It has multiple, vastly different meanings. It can mean master, leader, or patron, but it can also mean friend, ally, or beloved.
So Sunnis argue that the Prophet was essentially saying, whoever loves me as a friend and ally must love Ali as a friend and ally.
Exactly. Addressing some complaints that people had against Ali at the time.
Not, here is your infallible cosmic emperor.
Right. So you have the exact same text, the exact same historical event, but the interpretive lens creates two completely incompatible realities.
Okay, if we connect this to the bigger picture, here's where the paper threw a curveball that I really struggled with.
What part?
Let's assume, just for the sake of argument, the 12-verse Shia premise.
Yeah.
Let's assume these 12 men were explicitly appointed by God and possessed absolute divine infallibility. How do we explain their actual recorded historical actions?
You were referring to the historical paradoxes.
Yes, the taboo questions. Because both Sunni and Shia historical sources basically agree on certain historical facts. After the Prophet died, Hazrat Ali eventually pledged allegiance bayat to the first three caliphs, Abu Bakr, Umar, and Uthman.
Yes, he did.
He sat in their councils. Later, when Ali finally became caliph, he appointed governors who were deeply fallible, some of whom actually betrayed him or made massive political blunders. Then his son, Imam Hassan, inherited the caliphate, but famously chose to sign a peace treaty with Muawiyah, officially handing over political power to him.
Yes, the Treaty of 661 CE.
My question is, and this is what the paper highlights, how does an infallible, divinely guided leader who possesses cosmic knowledge make these choices? If swearing allegiance to Abu Bakr was a sin of usurping divine right, why did Ali do it? Why did Hassan surrender?
This is perhaps the most intellectually demanding part of 12-verse theology, because it challenges our basic human definition of what success and leadership actually look like.
Explain that.
The theological explanation relies heavily on two interconnected concepts: sabr, which is divine patience, and taqiyya, which is dissimulation or strategic concealment.
Explain how taqiyya works in this context, because usually people think of it as just hiding your faith when someone literally puts a sword to your neck.
It's much deeper than that at the level of the Imams. Shia scholars argue that Hazrat Ali's decision not to draw his sword against the first three caliphs was not an endorsement of their legitimacy, nor was it mere human fear.
What was it then?
It was an act of profound, agonizing sabr, designed to prevent the nascent Muslim community from annihilating itself in a bloody civil war just days after the Prophet's death. He sacrificed his immediate divine political right to preserve the very existence of Islam itself.
So it's essentially seeing the long game, the 4D chess of divine wisdom.
Precisely. If we connect this to the bigger picture, in 12-er theology, holding political power is not the ultimate validation of divine authority.
That is the crucial distinction.
Think about the prophets. Yahya, or John the Baptist, was beheaded by a corrupt king. Did that make him less of a prophet?
No, of course not.
Exactly. Similarly, an imam remains the infallible guide even if he is denied the throne, even if he's imprisoned, and even if he voluntarily abdicates.
Wow.
Imam Hassan's peace treaty is viewed through this exact same lens. To an outsider, or a secular historian, handing power to Muawiyah looks like a political defeat, a failure of leadership.
Right.
But to the 12-er believer, it is the ultimate proof of his infallible wisdom. He knew that fighting would only lead to the absolute slaughter of the remaining true believers, so he swallowed his pride, sacrificed his political ambition, and saved the blood of the community. What looks like failure on earth is actually the highest form of spiritual triumph and obedience to God's difficult plan.
That reframing completely changes the paradigm. The standard of success isn't who sits on the throne and collects the taxes, it's who preserves the truth in the blood of the innocent.
Beautifully put.
But, the thing is, this is all ancient history, right? 7th, 8th, and 9th centuries. Theories in theology are great, but life on earth doesn't just stop.
No, it marches on.
If the imam has been hidden in occultation for over 1,100 years, someone still has to pay the roads, run the economy, implement the penal code, and decide if the country goes to war today.
Exactly.
Which naturally brings us to the final and perhaps most explosive section of the paper. The modern, practical realities of imamology. How does this doctrine function right now in the 21st century?
That is the most pressing contemporary issue. Because the imam is in the major occultation, the practical question for centuries was, who leads the Shia community? Who is legally authorized to execute Sharia law?
Right.
For a very long time, the dominant stance of the Shia clerical establishment was political quietism.
Quietism meaning we stay out of politics.
Exactly. The logic was simple. Since only the infallible imam has the divine mandate to establish a truly just Islamic state, any government established before his return is inherently flawed and potentially illegitimate.
So what do?
Therefore, true scholars should avoid political power, focus purely on religious learning, guide the community spiritually, and wait patiently for the Mahdi.
But that completely flipped in the 20th century, right? The paper details a massive earthquake in this theology championed by Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini.
Yes, Ayatollah Khomeini fundamentally reshaped modern Shia political theology with his concept of wilayat al-faqih.
Which translates to the guardianship of the Islamic jurist, right? Or the rule of the jurist.
Yes. Khomeini argued that the community cannot just sit in a state of paralysis, suffering under secular or oppressive rulers, waiting centuries for the Mahdi to return.
So what was his solution?
Yeah.
How did he justify taking power without the imam?
He argued that in the absence of the infallible imam, his political and religious authority is temporarily but fully transferred to a qualified, righteous Islamic jurist, a faqih. The cleric essentially steps in as the general deputy of the hidden imam. He assumes the mantle of absolute leadership to govern the state, implement Sharia law, and protect the community until the Mahdi physically returns. And this doctrine became the foundational blueprint for the 1979 Islamic Revolution and the modern state of Iran.
But there is massive, intense pushback on this, isn't there? The secular critiques are obvious, but the paper highlights that there is massive criticism from within the Shia scholarly tradition itself.
Absolutely. The critiques are fierce. From the secular and ex-Muslim perspective, intellectuals argue that wilayat al-faqih is essentially a recipe for religious totalitarianism.
Because of the authority it grants.
Right. Their argument is that when a fallible human being, a regular guy who can make mistakes, claims that he is the absolute representative of the hidden imam, then criticizing his political policies becomes equivalent to criticizing God's will.
That is a terrifyingly effective theological shield. If you protest against a bad economic policy, you aren't just a disgruntled citizen. You are legally framed as an enemy of God fighting against the Mahdi's deputy.
Precisely. And that is exactly why internal reformist scholars have also strongly opposed it. The paper mentions profound thinkers like Abdul Karim Soroush and even several traditional grand ayatollahs.
What is their specific critique?
Their critique is jurisprudential and theological. They argue that the infallible imam's unique cosmic authority cannot simply be copy-pasted onto a fallible cleric.
Right, because the cleric doesn't have isma infallibility or ilm laduni.
Exactly. Reformists argue that the danger of wilayat al-faqih is that ordinary human political decisions, which are inherently prone to error, corruption, and bias, get dressed up as infallible divine mandates.
Which is dangerous.
Very. They argue that imamology should remain a deeply spiritual and eschatological reality, an ideal of perfect justice to strive towards in your heart, but it should never be used as a practical blueprint for modern coercive statecraft.
Honestly, when you look at this entire debate, from the ancient Persian light of Karenna to modern geopolitics, it forces you to look at the psychological dimensions of all this.
The psychology of it is fascinating.
The paper has this section on the psychology behind imamology. Why do human beings so desperately crave this infallible father figure? Is it all just a massive, complex coping mechanism?
Sociologists and psychologists who analyze religion from the outside often point to exactly this human need. Just look at human history.
It's a mess.
It is filled with cruelty, random violence, unjust wars, and corrupt rulers. In an uncertain, chaotic world, the idea of an infallible guide, a perfect human who knows the exact truth, who witnesses our suffering, and who will eventually return to fix everything and punish the oppressors, it is immensely, profoundly comforting.
Yeah.
It addresses the deep existential dread of being alone in a silent universe without a clear moral compass.
But how does that expectation actually affect human behavior? The paper touches on this. Does waiting for an infallible savior make people passive? Like, oh, well, the world is a corrupt mess, politics is dirty, but the Mahdi will fix it when he gets here, so I don't need to do anything. Or does it spark revolution?
The historical reality is that it has done both, depending entirely on how the theology is activated by leaders.
Give me an example.
For long stretches of history, it caused that exact passivity you described, political quietism. People endured suffering patiently, believing the timeline was entirely in God's hands.
Right.
But as we saw in 1979 with Iran, and as we see today with various armed movements in the region who heavily utilize messianic imagery, the expectation of the Mahdi can also be weaponized
Into what?
into a potent catalyst for apocalyptic revolution. The narrative flips from "we must wait patiently" to "we must actively prepare the ground for his return by violently overthrowing evil today."
The thing is, whether you personally believe in the historical and theological reality of the Imams, or you view it purely as a sociological phenomenon, you have to admit one thing.
What's that?
This devotion provides a massive, impenetrable, sacred canopy for millions of people.
Yeah.
It gives absolute transcendent meaning to their suffering. When the believers mourn the events of Karbala, they aren't just mourning a political assassination from the 7th century.
No, it's much larger than that.
They are reaffirming a cosmic guarantee that ultimate justice will prevail, no matter how powerful and wealthy the oppressors look right now. It is a deeply powerful, beautiful human phenomenon.
I agree completely, and that is perhaps the most intellectually honest and respectful way to view this entire exploration. Imamology is not just a dry academic debate about ambiguous Arabic grammar in ancient texts.
No, it's not.
Whether it is viewed as pure, unadulterated divine revelation, a highly sophisticated historical survival strategy, or a profound psychological coping mechanism, it represents humanity's most serious, complex, and enduring attempt to answer a terrifying question.
And what is that ultimate question?
When the prophet is gone and direct revelation from the heavens has permanently stopped, who speaks for God on earth?
Wow.
Sunnis looked at this terrifying vacuum and answered with trust in the community. Shura, consensus, and the collective evolving scholarship of the Ummah, they believed God guides the collective. Shias looked at the exact same vacuum, the exact same text, and answered with a divine bloodline, Nas, and a perfectly infallible guide. Every single sect, every group, tried to resolve this terrifying divine challenge in the best way they knew how.
It really puts everything into a humbling perspective. It's not just about who should have been sitting on a wooden chair in Medina 1400 years ago. It's about how we, as fragile human beings, locate truth, justice, and certainty in a world that often feels entirely disconnected from the heavens.
Exactly. It's a profoundly human search.
Okay, before we wrap up this incredible conversation, I want to leave you, our listener, sitting with us right now with a provocative thought. Something this research stirred in me that I just haven't been able to stop thinking about.
Let's hear it.
We talk so much about the hidden Imam, the Mahdi, returning to fix the broken world. Everyone prays for his reappearance. But imagine this scenario. What if the Mahdi were to actually physically manifest tomorrow? Just step out of the shadows after 1,100 years, standing in the middle of a modern city.
Oh, that is a heavy thought.
Would any of our massive, established modern religious institutions, Sunni, Shia, or otherwise, actually be willing to hand over their billions of dollars in wealth, their deeply entrenched political power, and their absolute authority to him? Or has the mere idea of a hidden, silent savior become much more convenient for those in power than an actual living guide who might look at their systems and tell them they are entirely wrong?
That is a piercing question. It challenges the very foundation and the sincerity of every modern religious institution that claims to act in God's name.
Something to seriously mull over while you finish your tea. May Allah grant us success. Come on, let's go. Don't forget to follow this channel, The Missing Dots. Thank you.